So AOC has introduced articles of impeachment against Justices Alito and Thomas. And folks, I think this is a very crucial time right now in our history because we already had a criminal president in Donald Trump, and the Supreme Court has gave him full immunity for official acts. So now we're stuck with a criminal Supreme Court. And that's why that I have been talking more and more about Project 2025. I've been talking more and more about what's at stake in this upcoming election, instead of just focusing on Joe Biden's stutter that we knew he always had, and instead of just focusing on the fact that he's old, which we've known the entire time. I'm going to play you some clips now from AOC bringing her case, and I think it's very important that we all follow along and listen to this because, again, this is a very crucial moment in our history, and we have to start holding these people accountable because if they have free reins, folks, our future is not going to get better. And that's not me trying to spread fear and hyperbole. That's just the truth. But take a look at this clip.
I rise today to introduce articles of impeachment against Associate Justices of the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Anthony Alito, Jr. Against Justice Thomas, the resolution includes 3 total articles. 1 count of failure to disclose financial income, gifts, reimbursements, property interest liabilities, and transactions, among other information, and 2 counts of refusal to recuse from matters concerning his spouse's legal and financial interests before the court. The second resolution includes the following impeachment articles against Justice Alito. 1 count of refusal to recuse from cases in which he had a personal bias or prejudice concerning a party before the court, and 1 count of failure to disclose financial incomes, gifts, reimbursements, property interests, among other information.
I think it's very important that we understand that this is not about Democrat versus the Republicans. The Supreme Court is supposed to be there to help us interpret the Constitution and to be fair-minded. It's not supposed to be lopsided. And right now it's 6-3. If Trump was to get reelected and he was to appoint 2 more Supreme Court justices, it would be 8-1. It's already bad enough as it is, but folks, if it made it to 8-1, we would probably never overturn that again in our lifetimes. But let's keep following AOC here because she's really on to something.
Reasonable Americans will and do believe that Justices Thomas and Alito are prone and subject to corruption, that the institution failing to punish them is broken, and that consequently their impeachment is a constitutional imperative and our congressional duty. The abuses of power committed by Justice Thomas and Justice Alito are precisely the types of corruption that the framers understood was an existential threat to our democracy. Instances like these and misconduct like that of Alito's and Thomas's are precisely why the framers gave us the tool of impeachment. Corruption without consequence infects all it touches. And that is why this body, Congress, has a constitutional and moral obligation to hold these justices accountable, to maintain the integrity of our courts, and to uphold the standards of the judiciary and our institutions.
She's absolutely right. Corruption without consequence does infect all that it touches. And folks, we need to hold people accountable. I don't understand why that we're even here. I got to be brutally honest with you. The hardest part about this for me is I can't believe we're even having the discussion that somebody could or couldn't be above the law. That's where they completely lost me with all of this, because I thought this was the United States of America. I thought the reason we had our institutions in place was to hold people accountable. And so when people start saying we have to do away with all those institutions, I don't think they truly understand the danger in that, because, yeah, it may swing to your side this time, but it could swing even harder against you the next time. And I don't know why that's so hard for people to understand. But now let's hear AOC lay out her cases against Justice Thomas.
The proof is undeniable, and here I will lay it out. Justice Clarence Thomas, for decades now, has carried on a close, financially entangled personal relationship with real estate billionaire Harlan Crow. It is of material importance to the American people to note that Justice Thomas's relationship to the billionaire only began after Thomas's powerful appointment to our nation's highest court. The cash, goods, and services Justice Thomas received over the years include large loan balance cancellations, tuition payments for family, and vacations in private jets and yachts worth up to $500,000 alone. In total, Justice Thomas appears to have received more than $1.5 million worth in goods, cash equivalents, and services from Mr. Crow. And that is just what we know of. But truthfully, we won't ever really know the total sum of contributions Thomas received from Crow. Justice Thomas not only accepted these contributions while Mr. Crow had business in front of the court, but he accepted them in secret, failing for years and years to report them. Yet Thomas did report smaller gifts during this time, demonstrating a clear understanding of his legal obligation to report. Would a reasonable American question that receiving lavish gifts from Mr. Crow might lead Justice Thomas to have a bias towards his, quote, friend with business before the court? Without a doubt, yes.
It's becoming pretty clear to me why they love to use the phrase the Biden crime family, because they're simply trying to project upon us exactly what they are. If they truly cared about what was in Hunter Biden's laptop, and they truly cared about Hillary Clinton's emails, and they clearly cared about every check that Joe Biden ever signed in his life, you think they would hold Justice Thomas to the same standard. But we all know they won't, and they probably won't hold Alito to the standard, but here's AOC's case against him as well.
In January 2021, after the former President of the United States incited an insurrection on the Capitol in this chamber to interfere with the results of the U.S. election, Justice Samuel Alito and his wife flew an upside-down American flag, a symbol of solidarity with the attack, outside their home. 2 years later, they publicly displayed outside their home yet another incendiary symbol, a flag associated with extreme right-wing Christian nationalism. Justice Alito maintains that his wife, Martha Ann Alito, is the only one responsible for the flags. But common sense maintains that such a close and incendiary revelation requires recusal by the justice from January 6 related cases. Despite the overwhelming appearance of a conflict of interest, Justice Alito refused to recuse himself from cases surrounding the 2020 election and questions of the former president's legal immunity in the attack. Would a reasonable person question that Justice Alito's conduct exhibits and demonstrates reasonable concern for bias in these cases? Absolutely.
You know, folks, I can see the rednecks in my part of the world grabbing a flag and putting it on their boat so that everyone on the lake knows where they stand. But what I will never understand is how that a Supreme Court justice could go out there and fly a flag off his house. Now, he blames it all on the wife. But I've never understood how that someone in his position of power could do that and not think that everyone would be looking and not think that everyone would ask him questions about that. Right after January 6th, all the insurrectionists starts turning the flag upside down. That becomes their symbol. They come up with their own flags about it, and then they just happen to fly off his house. I mean, again, I understand how that MAGA may say, oh, this is all working in our favor. What they don't realize is that once Trump doesn't need them anymore, it's all going to work against them. And what they also don't realize is that this is not about Democrat versus Republican, and I'm so glad that AOC said that. Take a look.
Mr. Speaker, I am here today presenting these articles of impeachment not because I am a Democrat and not because I am blind to its odds in a Republican-led chamber. I present them because it is the right thing to do. And while our framers perhaps may not have envisioned someone like me in this seat, they absolutely did envision the necessity and value of the impeachment action upon which I seek to advance today. Thank you, and I yield back.
Now, I know there's going to be a whole lot of critics out there that's going to say the only reason AOC is doing this is because she's upset at the Supreme Court's decision to give Donald Trump immunity, and they're going to say that she's just trying to play politics with this thing. But, folks, this is about having a system in place where we can hold our elected officials to account. Because if we don't have a system that can hold them to account, they have free reins to do whatever they want. And you should never want your elected officials to have free reins. Because if you give it to one of them, you have to give it to all. They didn't think that one through. The people on the right that are so excited right now about the Supreme Court's decision and Donald Trump getting immunity, what they don't realize is that very thing could work against them in the future. That's why that we have to hold our elected officials accountable. It's not about getting revenge. It's not about weaponizing the government against them. They have sat here and twisted this and created this straw man argument, and it's bullshit, folks. This is not about weaponizing the government against Thomas and Alito or Donald Trump or anyone. It's about holding them to account of our institutions. They were put in place for a reason. And I'm sure our founding fathers never realized that we would be in this kind of place one day. I'm sure if they could go back, there's certain things that they may have explained a little bit more in depth. But I don't know if it would have did any good considering MAGA and considering their mindset. Because it is clearly let us do whatever we want to and let us get away with whatever we want to get away with, but we're going to hold you to account. That's why I call bullshit on the whole official acts versus unofficial acts. We all know if Trump's reelected that anything he does, he'll say is an official act, and anything his opponents did, he's going to say is an unofficial act. He'll get to define that, and people are okay with that. Not realizing the rights that this Supreme Court has stripped away from women and will strip even more so away if they get stacked further to the right. And it will happen under the next conservative president. That's what they will intend to do. They've mapped it out. They've laid it out. People are starting to catch on to Project 2025 and understand what it is. But folks, they've been telling us this for a long time, that they were going to do this. I was one of the ones that was naive. For years, anytime the subject of abortion came up, I always said, well, this is just a wedge issue that conservatives use to tug at the Christians' heartstrings. It's just to get the evangelical vote. But they'll never actually do away with it. I didn't think they actually would. They actually did. And they're saying it out loud now. They're not backing down. They're saying they're going to do it. If reelected, they're going to do it even more so. So they're telling us who they are. And you're sitting back on the fence going, yeah, sure, don't hold them to account. Just let them win. You're going to think completely different when it's your daughter that's in need of reproductive care and can't get it. I don't mean to try to scare you or spread hyperbole, but I'm just saying when you're standing beside her hospital bed and she can't get the help she needs, and you have to lay there and watch her die, I'm sorry to be that brutally blunt, but you can pretty much chalk it up and blame it on the Supreme Court. And for everybody, I'm not trying to rub salt in a wound or be a Monday morning quarterback, but for everybody that's out there still making the same arguments they made back in 2016 about the Democratic establishment, look where those arguments got us. You can say what you want about Hillary Clinton. You can think whatever you want about Hillary Clinton. We wouldn't be in this boat today if she had became president. And if Joe Biden's reelected, we can start working to fix this mess that we're in. If he's not, we're going to be in an even worse boat than we were to start with. So that's what we got to think long and hard about come election. Again, it's not even really close to me. And I can't believe, again, folks, that we're having the conversation, should they be held accountable or not? That really blows my mind that we ever got here.